Hi, this is Ms. Schnettler. This video is here to help you with multi-view drawings. I'm hoping that this video will break down the process for you and make it as easy as possible to understand. So first, you'll need a full sheet of orthographic paper or regular graph paper with squares on it, and then you'll also need a small piece of isometric paper. I should have these pre-cut for you, but if not, I generally cut one sheet of isometric paper into about 6 of these squares. And they're not perfect squares, they're more of a quadrilateral. Alright, I'm going to take a shape. This shape is not exactly what the first multi-view drawing asks you to do, and I do that together with you in class, but I'm at home and I didn't think to write down exactly what shape you were given, and I know this one's pretty similar. So we're going to use this one. So for right now, I am actually going to put the orthographic paper out of my view because I don't need it quite yet. Again, I suggest you use a pencil. I'm using a pen, but it is erasable. If you have an erasable pen, that's absolutely fine. But I suggest a pencil because drawing and mistakes and things. So I'm going to take this. Again, I know this is the front and this is the right side. I say that a lot because it's going to be something that you need for multi-view drawing. So that's why I started saying it in the isometric view. Alright, so I found the front and the right side of my object. So I'm going to tilt that 30 degrees in that direction. And it doesn't have to be a perfect 30 degrees. You kind of get used to what it needs to be as you do these. I'm going to make a dot, and I'm going to start with my red cube. Again, that's just my starter cube that I painted on for these videos. It literally doesn't matter what color it is. Oops, I got a little bit out of order there. I did my vertical lines before my other lines, but that's okay as long as my cube comes out looking all right. I can see the top of my red cube, so I'm going to draw the top of my red cube. And again, I'm going to label it just because as we're doing these, it can be a little confusing. Once you feel really comfortable, you don't have to label them every time. I don't label them when I'm drawing for myself. But when you're first learning, I think it's a really good tip. Okay, I'm going to come out and draw my yellow shape. I can see the top of the yellow, so I'm going to draw the top of the yellow. Then I can see the green, which, just in case you can't, there it is. That's the shape we're drawing. I can't see the top of the green, so I'm not going to draw the top of the green. Here's the pink cube. I can see the top of the pink, so I'm going to draw the top of the pink. So drawing an isometric drawing is the first part of a multi-view drawing. It's not the only part. I'm going to take that, whoop, drop my scissors. I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it out. Just a rough cut. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. With this nicer paper, if you don't have scissors handy, you can also tear it really easily and not worry about ripping the paper very much. Then I'm going to grab my orthographic paper. I'm going to fold it in half. I believe this is hamburger style. And then I'm going to fold it in half the other way. You could do hot dog first and then hamburger. Doesn't matter. What I want at the end are these 4 quadrants that you can see. And it doesn't even really matter if it's not perfect. You just want to make sure you can see them. So if that means that you go back over them, you give them a really good crease, that's fine. What I don't want you to do, I don't want you to draw on those lines because this is video 1 and we're going to be doing some things later on as we get more comfortable with multi-view drawings. And if you've gotten in the habit of drawing lines between, it's going to get in your way later. So don't do it. It's a bad habit. I understand why you would want to do it. Parts of me want to do it, but don't. Now we're going to label all 4 quadrants. We're going to label this upper right quadrant isometric. We're going to label this quadrant top. This quadrant is front, And this quadrant is right side. So what we do in a multi-view drawing is we take our isometric and then we break it down into different sides. You don't have to glue this down. You can use tape instead if it's handy. I generally prefer glue just because it's a little less wasteful. And you're going to glue your isometric drawing into the isometric quadrant of your orthographic paper. Then what we're going to do in the orthographic sections, which is what these three are, we're going to do orthographic projections. Ooh, fancy. And that just means we're going to draw exactly what we see from the top down, exactly what we see from the front, and exactly what we see from the right side. And that's why they have been labeled this. Now that can be a little confusing, and I don't have fancy computer graphics to change the colors of my blocks like you saw in the Project Lead the Way clips that I have on Canvas. But what we can do is color code this, and you could absolutely do this with colored pencils or crayons or highlighters. So I'm going to take all of the front of my isometric and shade it in red. I'm going to take the top and shade it in yellow. And of course you could also pick any colors you wanted. And I'm going to pick the right side and draw that in blue. So when we're drawing these, we're only going to see certain parts of the shape. We're going to start with the top view. Again, I want to make sure that the front of my object is facing front. So if you have an isometric, then you know you just want to turn it back in that direction so your front is facing front. Alright, so looking straight from the top, I can see 1, 2, 3, kind of a little corner L shape. We're not going to worry about the height of this one quite yet. Okay. I'm just going to pick a space, it doesn't matter where. And I'm going to draw a cube. Notice I'm keeping it that 2 by 2 size so that this drawing will look similar to that drawing. They'll be a little bit different in size, but not a big deal. I'm going to label this one red, and I'm looking straight down from the top. And I know the camera doesn't quite pick that up, but it does. The next one is the pink one. I should not have drawn that line. My apologies. So when you're drawing your orthographic views, you only want to draw the outside object lines. You don't want to draw anything on the inside because they mean things. Alright, so this would be a correct start. However, we're going to come back and look at this shape in a minute and add some things to it. Alright, you can also see that we got 1, 2, 3 squares that we can see here, and that was the same as in our isometric. That may not always be true, especially when you're working with a really complicated piece, but it should be true most of the time. Now, as we move down to the front, we're going to be drawing the cubes that we can see with the red, and I'm going to take this object and literally flip it. Now, you can see from the camera, it's going to look like an L shape. 3 cubes up and down, 1 off to the side. Again, right now, we're not worried about the fact that this cube's sticking out. We will worry about that, but not quite yet. Right? I want to find the outside edge here, and I want to line it up. This won't seem very important now, but it is important later, so it is a good habit to get into. And again, I can see 1, 2, 3 cubes, so I drew 1, 2, 3. Remember, I only want to draw the outline of the whole shape. And then again, I can label it or not label it depending on where I am with my comfort level. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So drawing what I can see from that direction only. Now I'm going to flip it so I can see the right side. And if I hold it up to the camera, you can see it's going to make another L shape, just kind of backwards. I want to trace along the bottom edge because I want these to be on the same line. Even if it doesn't seem important now, I promise you it's important later, and it's a good habit to get into. And I'm going to make the outline of my shape. Again, you can label or not if you don't, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4 blue cubes, 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes that I can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes here. As a side note, when students do this, sometimes they forget to count. It's important to count or you're going to end up with shapes that maybe look like this, where it's a little bit too long in one direction or the other. So you want to make sure you're not doing that. Make sure you're counting out that you have 2 squares in every direction that you're drawing for one of the cubes. Also, the graph paper that we have is not very expensive, unlike the isometric paper, so it's really easy to rip. Just be gentle with it, and if it rips, it's okay. I'm aware. All right, so now we're going to come back to the top view. For the sake of this video, I'm going to go ahead and erase my labels because I want it to be really clear what I'm doing. But again, if yours are there, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So I come back to this top-down view, and this in the middle is taller than the others. So whenever there's a height difference, and I usually demonstrate this by running a pen or a pencil across it, when it hits another shape or it falls down to another shape, you want to draw a solid object line to indicate that there's a change of height. Now, when you just look at this, you don't know if this corner piece is shorter than the other two or taller than the other two. But when you come down here and you turn the shape this way, and you can see that from yellow to red, it gets stuck. You get a solid line there. And from red to green, it falls down. You get a solid line there. Then you can combine the information from these 2 different views, and you know that this one's the tall one. Then I turn it over to the right side. When I go from red to yellow, it gets stuck. So I'm going to put a solid line. When I go from yellow to green, it gets stuck. So I'm going to put a solid line. That altogether is a multi-view drawing. Things that come up every year when I teach this. Yes, it is important that your lines line up on the outside. It'll be very important later, but it's important now because this is an international format. Engineers all over the world, in all different countries, use this format to communicate shapes to each other. So it's important that we learn that format because we are learning to be engineers. So you want to make sure your outside edges are lined up. If you want to get really fancy, which I didn't do in this one, you can also try to line up your top edge with your isometric and your other edge over here. I don't take any points off though for your isometric not being lined up. I will take points off for this not being lined up. You also need to make sure that all of your squares are actually squares because you'll lose points for that. And you need to make sure that your quadrants are properly labeled. This one is always top. This one is always isometric. This one is always front. And this one is always right side. If you flip these, you will lose points because that's incorrect. You need to make sure that you're following the format. It's an international format. Just like in music, you learn how to read the lines and the spaces in between, and that's how people all over the world read music. So this is how engineers all over the world will read a multi-view drawing. So it's important that we learn those standards and we follow those standards when we are making them. But again, you have this video. You can play it back as many times as you need. You can watch it in slow-mo and make my voice all funny if that's what you need to help you. And of course, I'm available in class to help you as well. I just wanted to make this video in case you weren't in class for any reason, or you just wanted a little extra help at home while you were practicing. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful, and thank you for watching.